But speaking of old people, and here's what's become a very old argument, and I think Chuck Barkley has kind of the best spin on this. It's stupid. If you're going to have the MJ versus LeBron conversation, and especially if you're going to have it as often as they have it on ESPN and FS1, it just becomes like, do you have talent, or are you just trying to say something to get ratings? And I think it's an interesting conversation if you frame it properly. And I don't really want to compare Michael Jordan versus LeBron James to one another's just career side by side anymore, because I think you lose a lot of the context, the nuance of both of their careers. Um, MJ was in a league that was much more strong at the beginning of his career, and that weakened out. There was expansion during MJ's prime.
And it was dominated by big men. Big men were the attraction.
And it was a 2-point league, and the league kind of played into MJ's favor as his career progressed. You take LeBron, it was still a big man-ish league, but it was starting to become a forward guard league. Not really guard league. It's never been like a guard league, unless you're going to call it, unless we're talking shooting guards, but wing league. It became more of a wing league. But mid LeBron's prime, as he has the cheat code to building up the perfect team through free agency, player empowerment, comes the 3-point revolution and the Curry shit. And it's like, well, damn, I'm more of an old school player. I'm not this crazy 3-point shooter, and threes count more than two. And these young, cheap players are shooting these threes. And LeBron was able to pivot. But LeBron was also in a more talented league. And this is not me trying to cop please for LeBron. I'm not. LeBron has a different mindset towards basketball. He plays the game differently. MJ was a score first guy. LeBron James is what's the right play to make, no matter what the result is. So when people try to throw around the scoring titles, it goes, well, dude, LeBron didn't try to score as much, so he's not going to have the scoring titles. Like, I just think that's a weak argument.
Well, and then there were better scorers in the league even when LeBron's in it. AI was still a prolific scorer when LeBron got.
Yeah, T-Mac, Melo,
T-Mac, Melo, KD,
D-Wade, KD, James Harden.
There's so many guys. Hell, Westbrook at one point, because he led the league in scoring one year.
I know.
Harden. I mean, so like it's not fair to compare, because when I think of the scorers of the 90s, I mean, who is the second best? And I asked this question. Who was the second best shooting guard in the NBA when
Clyde Drexler?
And he was older, towards the more of the Jordan prime.
Right.
He was older. And then, when I think of name, I think of guys like Mitch Richmond. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, a guy that probably made 4 or 5 All-Star games, might have been on the All-90s team on 2K back in 2K3 when AI used to be on the front, or on the NBA Live, All-90s team. This was a guy that was on the team, played for the Kings, but you don't know anything about him, like.
But they're forgotten.
Chris Mullin was a shooting guard too, right?
Who?
Chris Mullin.
Yeah, Chris Mullin.
These are guys that were the shooting guards. Then you had Reggie,
Reggie, or a young Ray Allen, a young Kobe, a young AI. Like, so, yeah. And I really hate the 6-for-6 argument, because I go, hold on, you're rewarding somebody for getting beat earlier in the playoffs, then going deeper in the playoffs because of the finals record. I think that's just a terrible argument. It's like, hold on. Since when was 6 finals more than 10 finals? Now, if you want to go 6 versus 4, no argument. Well, slight argument, because who's your competition? Who did you play going to the finals? Charles, did we ever think that Patrick Ewing and the Knicks were a championship team? Stop it.
They don't look like they're built that way. I mean, I can name their starting 5, and that's about it. I can't really tell you much about the bench, but the first half of that, wasn't Pat Riley the coach on the first half of those Knicks teams?
Yeah, he was.
I know the back half. I don't know when Van Gundy took over. I guess when Pat went to Miami, but Van Gundy took him to the finals.
Van Gundy was a good coach, but I look at all of it and I say they played in different eras. There's totally different context, like a MJ and Kobe comparison is a little bit better because there's some crossover. A Kobe and LeBron comparison is a little bit better because there's a lot of crossover. But at the end of the day, if you're going to make the argument, the GOAT argument, look at what they did in the totality of their careers versus their peers.
It's yeah, and it's the same thing with boxing. And the first thing that came to my mind, obviously, most people are like Ali versus Tyson or something like that, And then you've got Foreman, you've got all these guys, even Floyd being in different weight classes. You're just like, well, who's the better boxer or whatever. And then it brought me to this thing that I thought in my head. You've seen Rocky Balboa, the movie?
No.
All right, in the movie Rocky Balboa, they had it was like it's technically kind of the last Rocky movie.
Mm-hmm.
They had Rocky 5, and then there was Rocky Balboa that came out in the 2000s, and the main villain was Mason the Line Dixon, right? And it's this black dude that's 6'4", and they did a fight of them on the boxing game on the I don't know what those are called on EA Sports. It's not just called boxing; it's called something.
Knockout or Fight Night.
Yep, and so
hit him with the left.
They had a simulation of Rocky fighting this guy who was the best of his generation to just cross over the fight, and they had Rocky winning because most people tend to lean on the side of what they've seen in totality. Jordan's career is over. LeBron's isn't. So LeBron can still write chapters. We know what Jordan's book is. You know what I mean? We know what that is. He's had all of his highlights. He's done everything that he can do. We've now got the 10-part documentary, that documented this whole entire thing. So we know what Jordan is. So, and of course, the younger the generation gets, because the less you saw Jordan, the more you were going to lean towards, well, who I saw. That's why for me, I got to see, like you said, it's fair to compare LeBron and Kobe more than anything. I got to see both of them. And so obviously I'm a Kobe fan though. And so there is a little biasness. But I do, and I truly believe that Kobe was the better player, in my opinion. I think that LeBron's done more, but I think that Kobe's a better player. And so, even at his position, I think that he did his position a little bit better than LeBron, honestly.
I don't want to get into that type of
He's a better scorer and a better defender.
Huh?
He's a better scorer and a better defender. Kobe was an excellent. Kobe's a fucking 10-time first. He has like the record.
Yeah, I know. I know, but
perimeter defender.
Yeah, I know. Kobe was a great perimeter defender.
Him dying probably even really makes him, because obviously whenever anyone dies, especially young, your legacy, it gets even bigger than what it, and his was already huge. He's big as fucking China. Like, you know what I mean? Like Chinese people love Kobe Bryant. Like,
yeah, it's just one of those things for me, man. And you talk about when the book is already written, you can talk about how good it is because you've read it all the way through. And if you've written papers before, you can have a decent paper and a great conclusion, and that gets you an A. And you know what? The conclusion of MJ's career is the Last Dance, and we've got to watch it. And it's a 10-part documentary that we watched during like the best time that you could ever watch a 10-part documentary because the world was shut down. Nothing was going on. It's like COVID stopped so MJ could like just restart this GOAT debate and get his credit. And then you got people saying, oh my God, after watching the documentary, MJ is the GOAT. Bro, watch the games. The documentary doesn't tell you anything new about who he was on the fucking court. I'm sorry. Like, I learned about him more off the court. I learned more about the team and the politics around the team. But the product on the court, I've seen the highlights.
That was. Yeah, we've seen the highlight tapes. And he did unbelievable shit. I mean,
and for the younger crowd, I'm okay with people, even people our age, like gaining shit from the documentary. But I'm not trying to hear Skip Bayless or Chris Broussard, who covered Michael Jordan, tell me that, oh God, after this one, signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yeah, and the thing with Jordan too is just, and this debate you could talk about this for forever. Jordan, when you look at Jordan, because you can, he played in two different eras because he did play in the 80s and he did play in the 90s, and he played pretty much equal amount of years in both because he's drafted in 84, rookie of the year 85. So what? That's 6 years.
Get his head beat in.
Yeah, of getting his head beat in, losing in the first, second, and then towards the end of that 80s, losing in the East Finals to Zeke and Dumars and Rodman. Then he breaks the seal, sends them home because he's losing to the Celtics. Then he's losing to them. Then he breaks the seal, gets to the finals, plays against a Lakers team post Kareem. So you still had Worthy in a getting old Magic in I mean, because these guys' shelf life wasn't the same. Larry Bird only played 12 years in the NBA.
And Worthy had a bad hamstring.
Yeah, and so you beat them, then you play Clyde. He's still in his prime. It's just it's the back end of the prime. Mm-hmm. You know, equivalent to that Celtics team that won in 08. Those guys were still in their prime, but they were on the back end of it. And you know, then who did he beat the third? He beat Barkley.
93. That's Barkley.
He beat Barkley in his prime. Probably the best Barkley's ever been. He beat him. Then he retires, comes back, loses to Shaq in the playoffs that year.
No, he didn't.
The 45 year, that is who they lost.
That never happened. He didn't lose. He didn't lose in the playoffs. We were talking about Michael Jordan. Once he won his first ring, he didn't lose in the playoffs ever again.
What it is he came back in like March, so he caught like the end of the. I mean, I know you know, but I'm just saying.
On the court. You're on the court. It happened.
He was, and they lost. I think they got swept.
It was like, yeah, they did.
I think they got swept, and if they didn't get swept, they lost in like 5 or something. And so, nonetheless, lose to Shaq and Horace Grant. Then you come back and then you do it. You go 72-10. You beat a solid Sonic team, I guess. With Gary Payton is on that 75 list. Some consider the best defensive point guard ever.
And
Sean modern back then's the first Blake Griffin. You know
what? And George Karl wouldn't let Gary Payton check MJ until they were like down 3-0. And that's when they got the 2 games off of them. It's like, hey, why would you not put your best defender on their best offensive player?
And Gary Payton's not a short point guard. He's like 6'4".
He's like 6'4". And yeah. Gary had like a tender hamstring or something like that. There was like some injury behind it. But it's still like, no, you let Gary lock up on MJ. And MJ struggled in that series when Gary Payton was on him. He said he did in the documentary. But, we say a lot of things. Like I've told a lie before. Believe it or not, I've told a lie.
All right. Yeah, nonetheless, Jordan, he got the ring. And then you play against what some considered at the time, certainly maybe the greatest duo. I mean, even though they hadn't won, I mean, you can't argue with it. John Stockton still leads the NBA all-time in assists. Still leads the NBA all-time in assists. And Karl Malone is second in scoring in the NBA history. And he's another guy that averaged like 27 points. His career average is very high. And Karl doesn't get his credit. He was not bad with the Lakers. He just was hurt half the time. When that team got put together, he was just hurt half the time. Plus, I imagine playing with Shaq, those 2 big bodies, that was probably really hard to do. Not enough spacing.
What was spacing in 04?
I mean, well, Kobe's got to do his work. I mean, so it's just like, what, is Gary and Derek Fisher taking turns giving it to Shaq? I mean, I don't know how that was going to work anyways. And we saw, obviously, when they played against a well-rounded team that was defensive-minded, they lose in 5. And so, but Jordan, his legacy is already written, and that's why we shouldn't, compare him to LeBron, and they're 2 different eras.
Exactly. And I'll tell you the one thing that makes Jordan such a which makes Jordan just resonate so much better with the common person is, we get to see a lot more of his flaws. We get to hear about the gambling. There's the rumors behind why he retired. You hear about him losing his temper and going off on a teammate. You see him putting his head down and staying with the Bulls, being underpaid, and you don't really see him just slinging his dick around. Then you got LeBron, who shows up, chosen one, day one, H2 Hummer, $90 million shoe deal on the table before he plays a game in the NBA. You know what, Dan Gilbert? You're running a shit show of a franchise over here. I'm leaving. You know what, Pat Riley? D-Wade's falling apart. You're not letting me do what I want to do. I'm going back to Cleveland. Hey, you know what, Cleveland? You want to get Paul George here? Yeah, that's nice, but I don't want to raise Bronny here. I want him to go to high school in LA. So I know this can probably win us a championship this year if I get Paul George and Kyrie, because we're going to move Kevin Love and do some other gymnastics. I'm not committing to you guys because Dan Gilbert, I don't like you. I'm going to LA because that's where I want to be.
Well,
LA.
as a matter of fact, not to cut you off, but outside of MJ, all the greats played were Lakers.
Right. Hey,
at some point.
LA, I know y'all doing this slow build, but this is LA. It's not how we went out here. Lonzo, go. BI, go. You know what, Coos? You even got the ring with us. You gotta go. Caruso, go. KCP, I got you a lot of money out here. Clutch guy, go. You know, so LeBron, he has power. He's King James, and he uses it. And people don't like that. It makes people uncomfortable to see somebody just throw their power around, and it's so blatant and obvious.
Yeah, and it's you know, and that's what everybody always get on him for. These teams that he played on, you know, even though, like I said, you look at it's not like Chris Bosh was on the All 75 team.
He was disappointed. He may make the 100.
You know, Chris Bosh was really good with the Raptors, and he fit his role with the Heat. I don't know if he's maybe he is one of the 100 greatest players, but I think his career just ended a little too early.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. We needed 3 more years of that, especially with him and Wade in Miami. That would have been nice to see, maybe if they made it to an East Finals or something, even with the falling apart Wade.
Well, imagine that pick and roll.
You know, people forget this, and Mike Wilbon brought it up because yesterday was Rajon Rondo's birthday. But when Rondo and Wade were with the Bulls, you know that they had who was the number 1 seed? They had somebody on the road.
Yeah, they had the I think it was the Celtics. It was
the
Celtics.
They were up 2-0 on them.
And then Rondo got hurt.
And that was all she wrote. But my point in bringing that up is just, you know, it's an unwritten thing. I don't think Bosh is I don't know. But either way, Jordan did have 2 of his teammates on there. You know, Rodman and Pippen were on that team. They were on the 75. And then granted, that's only 3 of his titles, you know, and he does have another 3. But Scotty was always there. And I guess LeBron's got Wade for 2 of his.
2, yeah. Bro, I saw some weak ass shit on the socials with the numbers, top 75 players LeBron played with and against versus MJ. It's like, oh, bro, you're reaching here. They were all on
threw like Shaq probably in there because he did play with Shaq.